Welcome to Craft Chocolate TV. I am Dylan Butterbaugh, and this is Ben Field from Kahalu, Mapele Fields. And we've been working with Ben for a long time on getting beans, making really good chocolate from different regions of Oahu, and then selling that in our tasting room. We're going to talk today about how Ben has scaled and improved his post-harvest handling. So if you could just give us some background on where you started and some of the really important steps that you wish you would have known.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so first trees in the ground, 2008, building up tree inventory still to this day. Probably started fermenting around 2012, 2013. Made my business.
That was right when we opened our shop, 2012.
You were up top, and I remember pretty quickly bringing you little bags of really bad beans. Might have been a year or two after you.
You were still in at UH.
I think so. Yeah. So yeah, we started filling little tiny boxes, and 25% maybe sellable by my
And
terms
give us an idea
today.
of little box.
Just over a cubic foot, so like 100 and some pounds of wet seed if we were lucky. That was like my. Are we in the triple
harvest.
digits of poundage of wet seed? You know. It took years of failure and just kind of putting up with suboptimal results.
Right.
But there weren't many people doing it, so there wasn't. You kind of had that going.
There weren't
first
YouTube
mover.
videos to watch on how to figure it out.
No, and there still aren't. You know what I mean?
Well, almost. We're doing it right now.
You have a wonderful thing, but in terms of like deep dive farming things, when it comes to like yeast in fermentation and like long topics on kind of these problems that we deal with, there's none of that. So we're making it.
We're doing it right now.
Now.
Anything that you think that people who are struggling to figure this out, that you've cracked some codes.
I think so. I think from going through this past winter into this spring and seeing how consistent our product is, and then juxtaposing that with the data that it took to get to that really consistent product, we've definitely gotten to a way more stable state.
Mm-hmm.
And like we said in the previous little clip, it's about batch size and frequency. And I think people, they might have batch size, but they don't have the frequency. And that's why they're still having a problem with their...
So the more you ferment, the more likely it's going to start going well.
As long as what you're fermenting is in this system of like you're using the same boxes in kind of the same places, and you've got this kind of consistency that these microbes tend to just kind of bioaccumulate in.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the fermenter. In my case, it's pretty much me making all these micro decisions on when to turn, how often to stir the beans, when to take them up onto the slab, when it's all these little, how long to age. It's been real singular. So I've just naturally probably gotten a little better at it.
Oh, for sure. Because what we were just talking about is you've done now almost 200 ferments.
Mm-hmm.
And it was some time, you tell me when you think you started getting good, but what I started noticing is somewhere around 80.
I think you learned this.
He's really getting the hang of these. These are really good. And the last batch was really good. And then you have one that wasn't as good, and another one, and then it get good again.
And I tell you how I rained that whole month.
Yeah, there was
and my
always some
system
factor.
couldn't handle it,
Right.
So, yeah,
Eggers.
It's really come together in the past 6 months. Like there was still curveballs, and before that, and really for me it was the frequency. We were getting batch size, but it was happening every 2 or 3 weeks.
All right. So about a cubic foot box. And normally our box is like more of a cubic meter, and not necessarily as high.
As
like 60
everywhere else
or something.
Yes. Yeah. 3x3x2 is what we use. And if you dump that out, that's one of these squares that you see.
Which is about 1,000 pounds of dried seed.
No, wet.
Wet seed.
3x3x2 foot box, 1,000 pounds of wet seed, 330 to 370 dry.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
All right, that's right. This is 1,000 pounds total.
Yeah, 1, 2,
like that.
3, something like that.
Okay.
I think what you would learn as a fermenter is to never kind of say you figured it out, because we're still seeing things we could do better, especially with small beans versus big beans. Yeah, there's still, we're not there yet, but we've definitely
by 1,000.
cracked into a state of stability that I would base a business model off of. Before that was just, it had to be supplemented by the nursery, you know? And so that was my 20s was just cycling everything back into the cacao and just keep pressing play every week as much as I could, you know?
And so as far as things that you continued to improve upon, you recently poured this slab, but we should probably go a little bit earlier than that.
Yeah.
You've done a number of box sizes for experiments. You also created a nice hoop house down there.
Yep.
Which helped drying as well initially.
Yep.
Like I'm just trying to remember some of the things that you went through that did help improve, that might have been rather simple, and some of them were big that helped a lot as well.
Yeah. So I think one really good thing that helped us was getting onto drying racks. Before we were maybe on tarps, and it was kind of hard to even remember. It was probably randomized, you know what I mean? Kind of whatever we had, because it was more of a side passion, you know? So you kind of had to just...
Yeah, you still had to pay attention and run the nursery.
You do all that, right? And so getting racks was really good because drying got a lot better, but it wasn't the final... It was just a puzzle piece. We needed the slab to sort of have a heating pad to get things down under 7. That's really hard to do in our area.
Yeah.
On the racks, it just goes up to 10, down to 8, up to 10, down to 8 every day and night.
100 inches of rain a year?
100 inches of rain on a wet year, 80 on a normal.
It's a decent amount.
And I mean, you remember
great growing conditions.
Great growing. And so maybe I was forcing it by, making sure we processed here. And I'm glad we did, because I feel like the person doing the processing needs to physically be close to that process.
It's babysitting.
You don't want them to go home at the end of the day. You want them to be at home with the beans, basically. But yeah, back to the racks. We were running into problems before this slab was created. We weren't able to finish things up.
For the drying, to get down to the 6 to 8% moisture content. 30 to 40 days sometimes. I'd have all my rack space full, just waiting for this batch to finish up, for the next one to come in and take that space. Now we've got the slab, and we just, as soon as it's surface dry practically, we bring it up here and finish it. And so maybe 30 to 40 days went down to like 10. Ooh.
So very, very, very good.
Yes.
Almost too good. You can overdo it and probably burn out flavors.
Well, I'm not tasting it in this right now, which is nice.
This is all within a 2-week window, and last week it did not stop raining.
Yeah.
So
you can say that again.
It was great to not be stressed through that week of rain, because if I just had my racks, I would have had a huge moldy pile of mess.
So you went to racks, which helped initially,
but it wasn't it.
When you did this slab, this really nice, clean, brand new, flat slab, everything improved a lot on the consistency.
So we basically created a heating pad that's covered from the rain, that every day heats up, and we lay the beans out, take them down to where we need them, and then into the sacks and out of here. You might see some sacks that's actually coming out of aging, so we'll also do some blending and sacking up here as well. So it's not just a finish drying, but also kind of shipping, you know what I mean, and blending and all that.
And this is a very easy place to blend. That's a good one. I didn't even think about that. With a
forklift, and you've got the discharge on these super sacks, you can just drive in reverse and it sends it out in a line, and then you just spread it out.
So I know this is kind of another fancy big purchase that you heavily invested in, but you bought a forklift that can rotate to tip boxes.
To tip boxes, but also to eventually load racks. So imagine driving along a rack and then being able to tip that.
Spill it.
And then also we're able to get rid of our shell load.
Is that how you do it in here?
Yeah, we can.
So you drive that forklift with the boxes and you just...
You can. So that's not how we'd like to do it. I need out of the ferment box, I need to get it onto racks to get it dried. We can't throw wet fermented cacao without staining it.
Oh, yes, of
You
course.
probably could, but you would need to
You'd
have
have to
some
wash them
sort
off
of
after.
membrane there, and that would need to get washed.
Okay, so I didn't understand this part of your process, but you take it from the box, you tip it onto your drying screens still.
I'm still hand loading it because the system wasn't designed for the forklift.
Okay.
Now that we have the forklift, we need to take our prototype boxes and build the right size ones, take our racks and build them to the lift.
But you take it to the screens first, let it dry.
2-3 days.
Okay.
And we're getting that
then bring it
extra,
here.
you know, there's a slight bit of mucilage that can be left.
Yeah.
Getting
and
that
that's
off.
what stains it.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, I see.
And then the dust load in here is way less too, because that 1/4 inch mesh is letting it all go, and then you can blow it out a lot easier.
Yeah.
So-
And then one of the last steps I think that you're working on is this vibrating table that we have here.
So
and
sorting.
we used to use it, sorting table. We used to use it for sorting out the fines after winnowing. So we'd have big shells and the fines that we would be able to sell in different ways, but it kept everything cleaner and dust free down the line for our nibs.
Yep.
We traded, and you're going to use that for separating bean sizes, which
So-
as a chocolate maker is wonderful because I can get either all little seeds or all big seeds, and when I go to roast, I can then dial my roast to that size and have more consistency.
Yep. Yep.
So it just helps us make better chocolate, but it all starts on the farm.
Yep. So in Hawaii, we have this incredible opportunity where we can dump a lot of money warranted money into these farms and get incredible results. And so I think that's what's cool about this place is we're putting that capital into post-harvest processing, and we're really starting to see these almost standards of really good Hawaiian cacao kind of sing through, you know, raisin notes and cherry notes, and then being able to repeat that through the seasons, and bananas, it's starting to feel like we're onto something, you know.
Hawaii is now getting a lot of attention internationally for some of the best beans in the world consistently at every bean competition. And that has a lot to do with what we're talking about. It also has a lot to do with some very passionate people who, like you said, they don't just go home after work. Like you're babysitting this stuff from fermentation through drying. Colin is doing the same thing. Max is doing the same thing. Dan's doing the same thing. So that's, I think, a big chunk in why we're all seeing better quality beans as the standard here in the state, which it has to be.
It's got to be a positive feedback loop because the tourists need to be getting this kind of chocolate when they come to the islands, and maybe not the stuff that's on the fringe still. The fringe stuff will get better, I think, with time, but really like the polished stuff is what we want our customers to be getting, and I think a lot of them, once they taste it, they crave it kind of potentially for a really long time.
I certainly have a preference for this stuff right here.
Yes.
This is some of the best beans in the world, consistently now. But one last question for customers out there, for chocolate makers that are watching this, how do they buy beans from you? If they want Hawaiian cacao, how do they get it?
We're not set up for retailing, but we can definitely handle some wholesale purchases. I'm starting to kind of think in the metric ton or fraction of metric ton kind of scale. And maybe we can put my email, Mapele at gmail.com.
Okay.
And just be patient.
How do you spell that?
Mapele Fields at gmail.com.
Very good.
Yep.
All right. Well, hope this is helpful for all the farmers out there and the chocolate makers wanting to know more. And we'll see you next time.
Later.